Adam Silver, for the first time in a while, recently spoke about Ja Morant. He said he's been checking in on the Memphis Grizzlies superstar. We know what he said. We're going to talk about some of that, as well as the third member of the Grizzlies being given a jersey retirement ceremony. That's going to be coming up next season. Who is it going to be? We got all of that. Plus, you got to rank these three players: Jake LaRavia, Zaire Williams, John Conchar. Whatever the order is, you rank them. We're going to do all that in a jam-packed edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer at the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome to the Wednesday edition, because you know we're with you each and every day, but we got a lot to talk about in today's show. As I mentioned at the top, we're going to start the show talking about Adam Silver and Ja Morant. We haven't had that conversation in a while. You know, the suspension and the disciplinary stuff is all behind us, but Adam Silver had some real interesting comments, I would say, recently about his recent check-ins with Ja Morant. We'll start the show with that, as well as, you know, the next member of the Grizzlies who will be getting his jersey retired. Hint, Marc Gasol, Zach Randolph. You can kind of put the pieces together who the player is going to be, but we all probably know. But we're going to talk about it because I talked to that player recently, as well as we're going to rank, as we continue to do our Grizzlies players review in our last segment, going to rank these three forwards who all could have critical futures, be it in Memphis or somewhere else potentially, but we're going to rank them and their value to the Memphis Grizzlies. But yeah, a lot of things to talk about here on today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies. And speaking of today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's that easy. $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. We're going to get started on today's show with this Adam Silver conversation with Ja Morant. So Adam Silver recently met with the national sports editors in New York City at the NBA's office there. And one of the things he was asked about is, you know, conversations with Ja Morant since everything that has taken place. If you've been living on a rock the last 2 years, Ja Morant's had a 9-game suspension. He's had a 25-game suspension. In between those times, Adam Silver had to answer a lot of questions. I mean, the 9-game suspension, a major part of it was helping Ja Morant, you know, from a mental perspective, just getting the help that he needs, you know. And then the second, you know, suspension, the 25-gamer, you know, he missed 25 games, but he was allowed to be around the team and things like that. So it was a harsher punishment overall. But you can tell Adam Silver, in his way, is a remorseful type of NBA commissioner, especially, you know, compared to his predecessor, David Stern. But with all that being said, here's some of the things that Adam Silver said in short. When talking about Ja Morant, he said, and I quote, he and I have checked in with each other over the course of the season, but more importantly, working with the Players Association. We have regular check-ins with him and his team around him and have done that throughout the year. All the reports have come back very positive. From everything we've seen, his development has been very positive. Working with the team and his personal management, having a stronger support team around him seems to be making a difference in his life. So a couple of things stood out to me there. The number one thing is that the NBA seems to be thinking what many of us, you know, locally, many of us have kind of got a bird's eye view of everything that's going on. And that's that Ja Morant, you know, is clearly, you know, changing some things around and making an effort to be, you know, a face, a potential face of the NBA, a face of the Memphis Grizzlies, and all of those type of things. How do I know that is the case? Well, we've talked about, you know, a couple of the reasons, you know, that we can point, you know, to those things as well. But then we'll get to that later. But the next thing I want to talk about was Joe Dumars' comments. If you're unfamiliar with Joe Dumars' role in the NBA, Joe Dumars is, you know, the former Bad Boys Pistons shooting guard, one of the best shooting guards in the league in the 80s, 90s, all-star, all of that good stuff. And here's what he said, you know, in particular, because Joe Dumars is the one, like Adam Silver is the face. When guys get a 25-game suspension, 9-game suspension, whatever the case may be, Adam Silver is the name that's mostly attached to it. But those in the NBA know that Joe Dumars has as heavy of an influence as anyone on these type of decisions. He was in the room when Ja Morant came to New York and met with the NBA following, the first Instagram live video where he was in the Denver area nightclub. He was face to face not only with Adam Silver but with Joe Dumars as well. And Joe Dumars gives you that former player perspective. Someone who has been in that role where you're dealing with all those things that come with an NBA player. And he kind of spoke from that perspective when speaking about Ja. Here's kind of what he said. He said, and I quote, "This is a young guy that has made some mistakes, but I will say this, though. When he came into the office and met with Adam, myself, and a couple more people, he owned it. He didn't sit there and make any excuses and say, no, I didn't. He owned it and accepted his punishment. When I see that, I really feel like a guy has a chance to be better. You can't get better until you own something." Us hearing Ja Morant own something is not unfamiliar. We heard it throughout all the press releases. Even after the first incident, he said, "Oh, I'm going to be better." And then the second incident happened, and whatever the case may be. But to hear Joe Dumars say it, I think is a little bit different. And my takeaways from those two guys' comments is I feel like the NBA now is a little bit more at ease with the situation around Ja Morant. That's a good thing. It's a good thing for the mental. Ja Morant can finally feel like he can move on with his career in terms of being an NBA player and not having to worry about being, I guess, watched extra carefully, even though now that those things have happened, he's definitely going to be watched more. But from the standpoint of the league kind of cracking down on him and babysitting, for lack of better words, it sounds like they're past that stage, and there's a trust being established from the standpoint of what Ja Morant has done over the last few months, over the last year, to improve in his relationship with the league, from the standpoint of there being a trust there on the potential face of the Grizzlies or the face of the NBA. And Adam Silver touched on, the changes that Ja Morant has made in his personal life. And if you followed me and Joe Molinax on here, one of the things that I talk about a lot when it comes to Ja is his personal circle, the circle that he had. It's a circle that, for the most part, most of them date back to, his life pre-Memphis. Some of them kind of joined his life as soon as he got to Memphis or early on, in his tenure. He's been here about 5 years now. But the point is, Ja Morant kind of operates with a tight-knit group that he's established a relationship with over years. It's not a lot of yesterday people or people in the last year that he's met in his circle. So with all that being said, there's a certain level of trust that's been established there, which led to, when those situations were happening, we saw, some people were saying, oh, Ja Morant should, disassociate himself with Devontae Pack, for example, one of his closest friends, or he should disassociate himself with certain people around him. And people were, saying things about T. Morant and his father-son relationship and all of that. All those people, Devontae Pack, T. Morant, they're still in Ja Morant's life. And just like, they are, just like Ja is making the changes, they're making the changes as well. And you, again, in Adam Silver's comments, he said that I've been checking in with Ja Morant and his personal team, not just Ja Morant. That stood out to me. That was important language there. And when we talk about the changes that he's actually made, because the changes aren't really that reflective in the people. The people that have been around are still around, more so to speak, but it's cleaner, I think, is the way to put it. For example, Ja Morant, as we talked about, started the 12-time AAU program where they coach the 6th and 7th grade teams. And guess what? Devontae Pack, he's the 6th grade boys basketball coach. It's a different perspective now from the standpoint of he's coaching, Derrick Rose's son. So there's a trust that has to be established there. Derrick Rose's son plays in Ja Morant's program. Derrick Rose, an NBA veteran, trusted Ja Morant enough to put his son in his program and say, hey, I trust you guys to mold my son to be a better basketball player. All of those things, I think, are important as part of the growth. T. Morant, he is as influential in the 12-time program as anyone. That includes Ja Morant because of the standpoint of he's coaching the 7th grade teams, but he's also involved pretty much throughout the whole AAU program 12 times. So those guys around Ja Morant, they are contributing to the changes as much as he is himself. And everything's been positive. Everything's been positive. It's all good vibes over there. And Adam Silver, Joe Dumars seemed like very understanding and very remorseful of the changes that Ja Morant's made. So hopefully it's the last time we have, that type of conversation, with the NBA commissioner, quote unquote, checking in on Ja and all those things. You want to move forward past those things, but only time will tell. And right now, time is telling us that it's a thing of the past, and Ja Morant and the people around him are all making the correct strides. Whether it's the 12-time AAU program, whether it's the agency, I didn't mention that as well. Ja Morant switching, his agency from Tandem Sports to Mike Miller's, agency as well. So that's another, noteworthy change. So all things point to Ja Morant trying to, make those changes, and so far succeeding in doing so. And speaking of succeeding, one successful former Grizzlies player will be honored soon. Who will that be? With another jersey retirement. We've seen Marc Gasol, we've seen Zach Randolph. There's another one on the way. We're going to talk about that coming up on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that, this episode is brought to you by our friends over at DoorDash. See, here's the thing about DoorDash. Look, all you got to do is go download that app over there. And remember what time of the year it is right now, because if you want to make mom smile, or whoever it is you want to impress on this special upcoming Sunday, start your Mother's Day with some flowers, or you can surprise her with some gifts from the brands she loves, and you can deliver them the very same day with DoorDash, because moms are a gift. So give her the best Mother's Day gift, and you can get gifts as thoughtful as she is with DoorDash, because you can select from hundreds of expertly crafted bouquets to the best of the take, to the self-care essentials, and anything else. And all of it can just be delivered right up there to her door. And you know what? If you need some help, guess what? Think about it like this. The mom, does she have a sweet tooth? Is she a tech enthusiast? Is she a beauty connoisseur? Is she outdoorsy? Whatever the case may be, however mom's, maybe she's into the sports stuff. No matter what she's into, you can make her smile with a fruit, flower, whatever the case may be. All you got to do is go over to DoorDash. So get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend 15 plus on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with the code Locked On NBA. That's all caps. Locked, LOCKEDON NBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms do apply. And order now. Make sure if you order now, you can get everything you need for Mother's Day on DoorDash. Use the code Locked On NBA to get 50% off of your next order. This episode is also brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs is the place to go. If you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role, whatever the case may be. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn Job isn't just another job board. It's not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn Jobs does all that while making the process easy and intuitive for you. So post your job for free right now at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba. Go over there right now. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to talk about the next Grizzlies player to get enshrined. It is with his jersey going up in the rafters at FedEx Forum. Stay tuned for that. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I am Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal here in Memphis, Tennessee. And we got to talk about number 3, third player going up in the Grizzlies, jersey retirement rafter. And that player will be none other than Tony Allen, the grandfather himself. That's not news to a lot of you. It is news from the standpoint of we now know that next season is when it will be happening. I had a conversation with Tony Allen recently where we talked about this, and he told me, he said, next year it is in the works. the Grizzlies will be having a jersey retirement ceremony for Tony Allen. So congratulations to Tony Allen now. And that's 3/4 of the core four pretty much locked in. Marc Gasol, Zach Randolph have already had their ceremonies. We know Marc Gasol's was about a month ago today. And Zach Randolph a couple seasons ago, I think it was November of 2021. And actually, if you remember, Tony Allen was supposed to go that same exact season as Zach Randolph. After Zach Randolph, he was supposed to get his jersey retired that same year. But legal matters off of the floor led to Tony Allen actually asking the Grizzlies to postpone it. The Grizzlies did so, and that was 2021. Now we're in 2024, and it's looking like the 2024-2025 season will be when Tony Allen jersey is retired. So no date has been set yet, but there are some more details out there as well. For one, there will be a documentary that'll go back to Tony Allen's Chicago roots, as well as tackle some of the things he's done in Memphis and his career with the Grizzlies as well. So a huge honor in the works for Tony Allen, Mr. First Team All Defense himself. I think he's very deserving. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a second, and I'm not going to do all the hollering and explaining why he's deserving. And this is really a Joe Monax segment. I wish Joe Monax was here with me today, because Joe, he lived the grit and grind days a little bit more than me. I was the kid from Memphis, and I was watching, I was tapped in, I was tuned in. But Joe was covering those guys, so he gives you that perspective as well. But are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day, and you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch over to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, and it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team each and every single day. Now getting back to Tony Allen. One more thing I want to tackle on this topic with Tony Allen is why does he deserve this? Because I broke the story and I saw, a little bit of what people were saying. Honestly, I thought it was a no-brainer. Like, Tony Allen, core four, like, that's Grizzlies lure right there. Like, when you think Grizzlies, you think grit and grind. When you think grit and grind, you think Tony Allen, Zach Randolph, Marc Gasol, Mike Conley. It's simple as that. Those four should go up together in the rafters, and one day we'll see all their numbers alongside of each other, just like when Marc Gasol got his jersey retired last month. All four came out to the floor at the same time instead of Marc Gasol by himself. Like, they're the core four. That's the group that went to 7 consecutive playoff appearances at a time where before that, the Grizzlies had never won a playoff game in franchise history. So they shifted the culture in Memphis drastically. And now the culture kind of, evolves around what those dudes created, because it was very synonymous with what the city of Memphis stands for. But with all that being said, Tony Allen, saw some people saying, "Oh, guy only averaged, 8 points per game," or how is his jersey, being retired? And is that all it takes? He never made an All-Star game. And I say, you didn't. 2 things. 1, you didn't watch Tony Allen. 2, you don't value defense. Like, I don't think you can really argue too much with this. I mean, there was a stretch where Tony Allen, he was in Memphis 7 seasons. 7 seasons. 6 of those 7 seasons, he made the all-defensive team. The only year he didn't make the all-defensive team was the season in which he played 55 games, which is the lowest, by the way, of those 7 seasons he played in Memphis. And it wasn't just that he was all defense. Check these out. First year, 2nd team all defense. 2nd season in Memphis, 1st team. 3rd season in Memphis, 1st team. Then the next year, that was the year he didn't make it. Then the next season, 1st team all defense. Last 2 years with the Grizzlies, 2nd team all defense, 2nd team all defense. Defensive player of the year conversation, he finished top 8 5 different times. This dude was one of the best defenders in the NBA. And if you want to break it down to just the perimeter, let Kobe Bryant go look it up. Go look up who Kobe Bryant said who was the best defender he ever went against. Go look up what Kobe, the Black Mamba, one of the best scorers, one of the most prolific scorers the NBA has ever seen. He said Tony Allen. Go watch Tony Allen guard Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson couldn't dribble against him. I mean, he's not a great dribbler in general, but just couldn't do anything with him. Go watch Tony Allen guard Kevin Durant in the playoffs against the Thunder and just swarm him. I mean, I remember watching that series as a kid and just you kind of felt bad for Kevin Durant because it was ugly. He couldn't do much. Tony Allen is one of the best perimeter defenders I've ever seen. And we're so stargazed with offensive numbers. The problem that I have with a lot of people in this whole NBA culture thing, a lot of these people rather have a guy who averages 19 points. I'll go a little higher. I'll say 21 points and plays no defense than a guy like in Tony Allen's case, who's going to give you 9-10 points a game and absolutely lock down the opponent's number one option. I want the Tony Allen over the other guy because I can put some other scorers around Tony Allen, like the Grizzlies did with Mike Conley, Marc Gasol when he was aggressive, Zach Randolph. And you tell him, go hunt. See that guy? That's the best scorer over there. Go guard Kobe. Go guard Kevin Durant. Go guard Manu Ginobili. Go guard Tony Parker. Go guard whoever the premium option is on the other end and eliminate him from the game. Tony Allen was able to do that pretty much for his entire tenure in Memphis. So just like we talk about how other guys are great offensive players and some of the best offensive players of all time, he deserves that same recognition for the defensive end. And that alone is enough when we're talking about getting your jersey, putting that number 9 in the rafters. No brainer to me. Let me know what you guys think as well. Is anyone out there who says, I don't feel like Tony Allen really deserves this honor? Let me know because I want to know what your thinking is. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. I was kind of surprised to see some people, say some of the things they did. But nevertheless, that's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. Speaking of sticking to it, coming up next on Locked on Grizzlies, we're going to rank some players. Jake LaRavia, Zaire Williams, and John Conchar are 3 critical forwards on this team. How do they stack up in Memphis going forward? But before we get to that, remember that today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Monopoly Go. Look, Monopoly Go. I recently downloaded the game because Joe Mullinax has been telling me about it. I know Joe Mullinax has this real competitive side, and I got this real competitive side. So I had to go download Monopoly Go. And look, at this point, you guys have heard us talk about it enough. You've heard us talk about Monopoly Go. But guess what? In Monopoly Go, you can team up with your friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you locked. And there's so much to get. You can get unique stickers that you can trade with your friend to complete albums for big prizes. You can get cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. Hilarious emojis for taunt friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults or anything like that. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. There's a ton included with their own unique mini games like digging for treasures or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new time events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. Make sure you go check all of this out on Monopoly Go because there's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So go get it right now. Go get it right now and go download it for free on Google Play or the Apple Store app. That's Monopoly Go. The game is on at Monopoly Go, so make sure you go check that out. Welcome back to Locked on Grizzlies, everyone. And now it's time for our last segment where we will continue the player reviews that we've done in recent days. If you've been tuned in, we've talked about a lot of important players with the Grizzlies over the last few days, a lot of the players who pretty much have firm roster spots at this point in time going into next season. We talked about, G.G. Jackson, Vince Williams. Talked about Ja Morant, Desmond Bain, Jaren Jackson Jr. There's a lot of guys that we still got to talk about. We haven't talked about Santi. We haven't talked about Luke Kennard, Brandon Clark, etc. But I think there's a more pressing conversation for 3 guys in particular. And that's three of the wings, as I've mentioned and others have as well. The wing position is a little bit loaded, right? You got a lot of guys vying for not too many spots. And some of those guys are, players like John Conchar, Jake LaRavia, and Zaire Williams, where in times they've looked like, oh yeah, that's the missing piece. That guy's going to grow into something we need exactly for a potential playoff run. And then at other times, whether in Jake LaRavia's case has been mostly injuries, Zaire Williams' case has been inconsistent play. In John Conchard's case, it's just sometimes you look at his stat sheet and you say, he just played 25 minutes and took 2 shots. Why is he not shooting the ball? So it's different for each player. But we're going to have some little fun here. We're going to have some little fun from the perspective of we're going to rank these guys. And there are going to be reviews within those rankings because we're not talking about just who's the best player here. We're talking about who fits Memphis going forward. And in terms of fit Memphis, we're combining the idea of which player is the best with the idea of the money that's committed to them over the next few seasons, which means if they're the easier to offload, probably going to make sense to, dink them a couple points in this case or whatever the case may be. And then the consistency, who they play well with on the floor, all of that is being considered. Jake LaRavia, Zaire Williams, John Conchard are the 3 guys that I'm going to mention here. And from a value standpoint, and I'm going to start here. From a value standpoint, the guy that I want to start with is Jake LaRavia. He's at the top for me. Might be a surprise to some of you. Some of you say, oh, Jake LaRavia at the top. I put Jake LaRavia at the top for those 3. So let me explain why. One, Jake LaRavia's only played 2 NBA seasons. Zaire Williams played 3. I think John Conchard is 5 in at this point. 2 full seasons for Jake LaRavia so far, and not a lot of playing time. Not a lot of playing time. We know the first season, he started off, I think, first 5 games of his rookie season was the best shooting rookie in the NBA. And then injuries happened. And next thing you know, played 35 games as a rookie. Then he played 35 games in his second season. And in his second season, what we saw is a player who, with more opportunity, averaged 10.8 points per game. Doubled his minutes, went from 11.8 minutes to 23 minutes. But what we didn't see growth is he shot 38.9% as a rookie, shot 38.9% from the field in his second season, shot 33.8% as a rookie from three-point range, shot 34% from three-point range in his second season. Now, granted, if you go over the last month, you go to those last few games. I mean, in late March, April, Jake LaRavia looked like a completely different player from early on in the season where there was a lot of hesitancy and, you just felt like he wasn't in a rhythm. And he said it himself, like talking to him at the end of the year, he sounded so confident in his ability to do what he was doing and potentially even do more going forward. So that's why I got Jake LaRavia at the top right now. I think he's the one where you talk about who can realistically improve of those 3 and take another step in terms of being in this potentially in this rotation. The fact that he has the size to play the 4. I think that stands out because the 4 spot, behind Jaren potentially right now is, a little bit of a weak spot. Santi brings some things there, but we'll talk about him a little bit more going forward. Number 2, I got John Conchard. I don't want to talk too long about just what John Conchard is and what he brings, but the thing about John Conchard is, one, I like him. I know Joe Lonax calls him white rice and pretty plain, playing style and all that stuff. But I just think he's like your fixer-upper. In the areas that the Grizzlies need, he can get the job done. They need defense. They need perimeter defense. They need, someone who can knock down some open shots. They need someone who can crash the glass and help the bigs. All those are areas that John Conchard has value. Now, the shooting is the one where it's a little bit questionable because, one, he hasn't been taking a lot of shots. Took a little bit more this year. But, 2, his three-point percentage kind of went down this season as well. So you look at it from the standpoint of offensively, that's his bread and butter. That's what he brings. John Conchard brings shooting. So when he isn't shooting the ball well, it's like, all right, what do we have here? So you go through the course of his career. As a rookie, only played, 19 games, but 50% from three-point range. But beyond that, 37.5%, year 2. A couple seasons ago, he was at 41.3%. But the last 2 seasons, 72 games played in the 2022-23 season and shot 33.9% from three-point range. This past season, took 2.2 three-point attempts per game and shot 31.7%. That's not good enough. That's why he's second for me, because defensively and the rebounding, I know what he's going to do. This season he averaged 1.3 offensive rebounds per game. A couple years ago, in 18 minutes, he averaged 1.2 offensive rebounds per game. Like, he is going to crash the glass. He is an effective offensive rebounder and defensive rebounder. And when we're talking about Jaren Jackson Jr. lineups at the 5, that makes a lot of sense. Now, lastly for me, I'm going to go with Ziaire Williams. And I still believe that, honestly, there is a role for him in Memphis. There is a role. It's not a substantial role where we talk about him like a couple years ago as a future starter and things like that. It's a role that's very specific to the things that we've seen him do well. He's shown that he can run the floor at a high level. He can get to his mid-range shot when given the opportunities. He has not shown the ability to be, a great pick and roll decision maker. I know the Grizzlies kind of tried to put him in those roles, but it hasn't really worked out. The three-point shot as well has been very inconsistent. He's had some games where he knocks them down. Then he has games where he doesn't really give you much, from three-point range. So Ziaire Williams is third for me, as well as the contract. Again, I talked about contracts at the top of this. The contract is a big part. You're going into a season where Ziaire will be entering, the final year of his current deal. So he is a player that potentially could be moved. We talked about three-point shooting. That's the area the Grizzlies need, that three-man. We talked about with Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., and, Marcus Smart, or potentially even a center. All those guys are not great three-point shooters. The only three-point shooter that I think opponents will look at in the Grizzlies starting lineup and say, hey, if he's open, you better run out there like your life depends on it, is Desmond Bane. Everyone else is like, oh, okay, we'll give him that one. And you don't want that to be the case. You want to have multiple guys. And the thing is, this other potential wing starter, is the guy that should be the player who swings that, because Ja is what he is. He's one of the best paint scorers in the NBA. I take the strengths with the weaknesses all day. He's still one of the best point guards regardless. Same thing with Jaren Jackson Jr. He's still one of the best, in the league, at what he does in the front court, even though he'll shoot 34% from three-point range. But Ziaire Williams, 31.4% as a rookie from three-point range, 25.8% in year 2. This year, 30.7% from three-point range on 3.7 attempts. So getting a lot of attempts up, but just not effective shooting the ball from three-point range. I think that matters, and we have to factor all of that in. So I rank the players: Jake LaRavia, John Conchar, Ziaire Williams in my player reviews. Let me know how you rank them as well. I'm sure your list might look a little bit different from mine, but let me know what you guys think as well. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube now, and it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV channels app. So make sure you go check that out as well. Make sure you check out Locked On Grizzlies on tomorrow with me and Joe Mullinax. We'll be back with you as a duo. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And remember, Locked On Grizzlies is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, I'm Damichael Cole, and we'll see you on Locked On Grizzlies.